Let's talk about the destruction of Black America and how the left has been the culprit of it in various ways, and they continue to change their strategies in order to demoralize Black culture. Okay, because we can't talk about Black fatigue, we can't talk about crime rates, we can't talk about any of that unless we start really looking at, I mean, we can, and we do, but we also have to be able to acknowledge, where does all this messiness come from? Because this isn't just inherent in the DNA of Black people. Okay, there are some people that try to say it's just coded in us. No, it's coded in our culture, and it was put there for a reason. Now, when we start off with this conversation, you have to talk about the history of Black father absence. And it has become a cliche, really, at this point, where you see something ghetto, you see a crime, you see something nefarious, and you immediately just go, where are your fathers? Or where are your fathers? Who is your daddy? Did you grow up without a father in the home? It's become a cliche. While there's truth to it, it also gets a little annoying sometimes as a Black conservative when you constantly hear the only excuse for, why did this happen? What's the justification for this? People just immediately go to Black father absence. But there's some truth there. The other cliche that we're going to talk about later today is this whole narrative of strong, independent Black women who don't need no man. We've all heard that trope. We've all seen it in TV shows, cartoons, all of that growing up. At least I have, someone that's always been watching Black media and shows like Family Guy. You always hear about the strong, independent Black woman who don't need no man type of vibe. And as bizarre as it is and as annoying as it is, where does that come from? So if we're sitting here talking about the fact that there's truth to the issue of Black father absence, we first have to talk about, what does Black father absence actually cause? Because there's a lot of personality traits, like you can just tell when somebody has daddy issues, but even just from a statistic standpoint, the impact of Black father absence cannot be overlooked. Okay, if you do not have a father in the home, particularly if you're in a single parent household, which usually means the father is absent, you are 5 times more likely to be impoverished. Okay. You are also significantly higher odds, or you're at significantly higher odds to be a criminal, especially when it comes to homicide. You look over in my hometown of Chicago back in 2020, of all the people in Chicago, massive city, all the homicide that rose in that city, 80% of the homicide victims were Black. And as we know, 90% of the people who die that look like me are murdered by other people who look like me. Okay, Black on Black crime has become a very real thing. Then you also have the element of education. You're 9 times more likely to drop out of high school if you do not have 2 parents in your home. And, there's overall just this element of abandonment and this diminished trust in community, and really like not understanding what a nuclear family or what stability actually looks like when you are in this single parent household. And again, before I even get into all this, I want to make something clear. This is not an attack on Black fathers. Okay, because that's, again, a conversation that people are tired of in the Black community, where there's this trope that none of the Black fathers are present. There are phenomenal Black fathers out there. Shout out to Black fathers. Okay, there are incredible leaders and men of strength who are Black fathers out there, who have stepped up and who are, really pushing forward with great values. This is also not an attack on single mothers. For some reason, when you talk about Black father absence, a lot of Black, and I mean, I guess I can get it, but a lot of strong single Black mothers will take offense to the conversation too. This is not an attack on anybody. This is just me talking about statistics and talking about the impact of not having that 2-parent stable household. Okay, because currently over 70% of Black children are growing up in single parent homes, typically without their father. So when we talk about why are these Black fathers missing from home? Okay, because I would argue that the absence of Black fathers stems from a complex interplay of, real historical trauma, not the victim mindset stuff, but real historical trauma, welfare policies, cultural shifts with the baby mama culture, and the systemic forces that have completely undermined the importance and significance of the Black nuclear family as a foundation. So if we go into the history of this, I'm not going to hyperfixate on slavery, because a lot of people just only want to talk about slavery for whatever reason when they talk about Black history and Black culture. But, it is worth acknowledging that slavery did have some effect on today. It did fracture Black families through forced separation, sales, denial of marriage, all of that. So that already kind of created this stigma within the Black community. But I don't think that that's what's that part is what's affecting today. If anything, I think the impact of slavery and the separation of families in the Black community actually made the Black nuclear family stronger post-slavery. And I might have worded that a little off, but I guess to clarify what I'm trying to say is, with slavery, with the fact that all these families were being separated and all of that, when Black families were able to stick together as free families, it made the Black family unit stronger than ever. Okay, that was the strongest it's ever been here in America. If you look at the post-slavery, during Jim Crow, and like immediately after Jim Crow, the Black family unit was so strong. Pre-1960s, particularly in like 1925, 80% or 85% of Black households in Harlem had two parents. And pre-1960s, Black marriage rates were comparable, if not higher, than the rates of white families. If you look at the data from like 1890 to 1950, that data shows that Black women, shout out to Black women, they had higher marriage rates than a lot of other demographics. And Black families were economically rising. There was Black Wall Street, there was Black prosperity, there were Black-owned businesses. Shout out to my I believe it's my great uncle started one of the first Black schools over in the South that was, I think the building is still standing there to this day. So there was a lot of Black prosperity in that era until there wasn't. Until I would say the first big catastrophic hit to the Black family during the civil rights era was the welfare policies. The welfare policies that specifically incentivized father absence. So if you've never heard of the Great Society Act and the welfare expansion, that was due to Lyndon B. Johnson's 1960s welfare programs, where they were giving aid to families with dependent children. Now, with that, they had this clause for man in the house rules where they penalized mothers if a father was living in the home or if a man that was capable of working lived in the home. So this literally incentivized single motherhood, where, in other words, they told women, if you have a man that is able to work, the government is not going to support you. Now, if you have a man who is in the house that's capable of working, he's still more likely not going to make enough money to support you. So there's this phrase from Tyler Perry, I can do bad all by myself. And it really sounds familiar. If you have the choice of having no father in the home, no man in the home, and the government's going to give you more aid, more support, and make things easier for you, why would you have a man in the house where you guys are just going to struggle together? That was the mindset back then. And that is not something that was done on accident. That was done by design. Because when we talk about this president, Lyndon B. Johnson, because, oh yes, we're going to school today. It ain't always just entertainment over here, child. We get into some real tea today because it's so ironic to me growing up because, I grew up in a very left-wing, very liberal, progressive household. I was always told that this was a great president. I was told that this was a great man for Black people because on paper, they really try to present him that way when you grow up in public education. They try to make it seem like Lyndon B. Johnson just really loved Black people. But if you haven't heard by now, the notorious quote from him is that when he was putting these welfare policies together, that he would have these N-words, hard R, voting Democrat for the next 200 years. And low key, is it working? Is it working? He was this, so Lyndon B. Johnson, he was this Southern Democrat, and he was aligned with the segregationalist party, the Dixiecrats. And that was largely to support, to get political support in Texas, where he really needed that. And before he was president, even particularly. And if you don't know, the Dixiecrats are who started the Ku Klux Klan. So when we talk about the history of the KKK actually coming from the left, that's very literal. They stemmed from the Dixiecrats. The Dixiecrats are also who put in place like a lot of the stuff that led to Planned Parenthood going out of their way to try to abort all the Black babies and the Jewish babies. We got a lot of the same ops. So when you look at Lyndon B. Johnson's record, he voted against civil rights measures and the best interests of Black people almost every single time before becoming the president. He voted against anti-lynching bills from 1949 to 1950. Those were trying to prioritize the rights of Black people to be safe. But you can look at the Senate records to this day. He was not in any way trying to go out of his way to make it to where Black people could feel safe in their communities. He also opposed the anti-poll tax measures in the 1950s, which would have preserved Black voter disenfranchisement. He rejected fair employment laws from 1949 to 1952, and this blocked a lot of the economic progress that was happening for Black people to appease a lot of the more racist Southern voters at the time. And also, and one other thing, he weakened a lot of the Civil Rights Act, the 1957 Civil Rights Act, as Senate Majority Leader, because he was often just diluting the enforcement of that for his own political gain. And there's no surprise that this is the same guy that led the policies that led to the demoralization of the Black nuclear family. Okay, so you have all these Black kids being born in this era, and all of a sudden the birth rate goes from 24% to 24% of Black babies being born into wedlock to all of a sudden almost 71%. So this massive increase, almost triple the amount of Black babies were born into wedlock due to these welfare programs and the system that was put into place. And one of the things that we need to debunk is this whole party switch narrative, because a lot of people will try to tell you, oh, the party switched. The parties didn't switch. Okay. That is a lie from the pits of hell. Okay, this whole thing where people try to say that Democrats and Republicans switch their ideologies, especially when it has to do with race back in the 60s, that is a myth. We actually have a great video about that on PragerU.com. We have a 5-minute video that is just straight up debunking the whole... Shout out to Dr. Carol Swain. Why did the Democratic South become Republican? We actually have a few. We have that one, and then we have some that I think particularly are just addressing the whole party switch narrative, because that was one of the things that red pilled me back in 2020, because I couldn't believe the fact that, oh, I just thought that one day they just switched sides. But that's actually not what happened. And if you're watching and not just listening, we have up here just some of the different myths that were put out there, debunked by PragerU. So make sure you click the link in my description to go over to PragerU.com so you can subscribe and get more of this information. Now, when it comes to the whole party switch thing, the Democrats have always stuck to their core principles. Okay, they always favored government intervention. They always wanted bigger government. They always wanted welfare and to have these handouts and to make people dependent on the government through these handouts. Meanwhile, the Republicans were always about pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and having limited government. That all has remained very consistent. Okay, so the whole premise of the switch is just a lie, because then when you look even just numerically in Congress, there was very minimal seat changes that occurred after 1964 Civil Rights Act. Only one of the 21 Democrat senators switched over, and one of the 33 Democrat House members switched over to the GOP by 1968. And over the course of 30 years, there still was very minimal after the Civil Rights Act of people who actually switched over. Most of the voter realignment that happened in that era had to do with regional and cultural shifts rather than just this narrative of an ideology switch, because that never happened.